Howdy, howdy. Happy Tuesday, June 17th. It is coming to you live here on a weekly show. I'm your host, Jen Sylvester, coming from Massachusetts, Plymouth, Massachusetts, and where we talk all things real estate news related, what the heck happened this past week in the real estate market, and try to make some sense of it because some of it is contradictory. And I literally saw two articles stacked on Google, one on top of the other, with completely opposite reporting. So that's the state of affairs in the housing market. But we're going to talk about the housing market flipping. Not flipping off, although I know that if you're trying to buy a house right now, that's probably how you feel towards the housing market at the moment. But we're going to talk about the housing market flipping and sellers are panicking. And I don't know that all sellers are panicking, but there's a lot of nervous sellers. There's a lot of nervous sellers that are watching their net proceeds disappear as these home prices are dissolving and starting to soften. And depending on where you are in the country, it may be a tale of two markets. If you're up here in the Northeast, it's one story. If you're down the South Coast, if you're down, southern regions, Texas, Florida, California, some of the Midwestern states, it is spreading more and more. We're seeing prices soften. So we're gonna dig into that, and as we get things rolling here, if you have questions, pop them in the chat. If you've got any interesting stories, pop it in the chat. If you have any success stories, I would love to hear that. And I think we can use any and all success stories, because you know what? You're not getting it on the news. There are no success stories being published in terms of people selling their homes successfully or buying. They make it out to seem like nothing's absolutely, no one's doing anything, and that is just not the case. So chime in, jump in the chat, and we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. But before we dig in, we got a little bit of breaking news here. All right. So we've got this article that jumped up actually as I was doing some research here. Came across this article earlier today that was interesting, caught my attention because we talk a lot about HOAs, and how frustrating they are. And really, over the last 10 years, they're pulling some punches. And it is unbelievable what's happening. And this particular article is coming out of Pennsylvania. It says homeowner stunned after HOA's strict ban puts them in dilemma. It is very confusing to me. So this article, it says living in a homeowner association can be challenging, especially when trying to adopt eco-friendly changes. One homeowner found themselves in a dilemma after finding out that their HOA bans electric vehicle charging. I was confused at this. How can they do that? It says the original poster lives in Pennsylvania and had purchased their EV before moving into their wife's townhouse. Since Pennsylvania is not a right to charge state, honestly, I didn't realize that was a thing. The OP reached out to Reddit for advice on proposing a solution. It says, while I don't find the board members to be jerks, they are generally intolerant of any changes, and especially never try to find middle ground. They can be stick in the mud. I lived in an HOA. My husband at the time and I, that was our first place, was a townhouse in an HOA, and I can totally agree with that about them being a stick in the mud. It says also it's very confusing to me that most HOAs seem to ban electric vehicle charging. I can't talk tonight. I can't read tonight. It says usually they're not banned in your documents. Usually you have to request to install with your architectural committee. This is interesting to me because if you are installing on a townhome that you own, Depending on, yeah, most of the time you own on a townhome, you own typically studs in. So what that means is everything on the inside, you can do whatever you want. The HOA is not going to determine whether you can paint your walls a certain color on the inside, put in certain flooring on the inside, depending on what, if there's any special requirements in the HOA rules. But in general, if you're doing it on the outside, totally different story. But if you're installing, an EV charger inside your garage, it says I wouldn't go to the board with any plan where your run would be visible, run it underground, around, or under the slab. That sounds ridiculous. In this case, denying a homeowner the right to charge an electric vehicle causes a major headache for them and makes it difficult for them to drive their car. Across the US, HOAs have been preventing homeowners from making money-saving, eco-friendly changes. Other Redditors, not to be confused with realtors, we're talking Reddit posters, have shared their frustrations online with HOAs blocking them from installing solar panels, which I can, to be honest, depending on the HOA, I could potentially see that. Growing a native plant garden or even hanging laundry outside to dry. That's a big infraction right there. I know a lot of HOAs do not want to see laundry hanging outside. It says when HOAs restrict these types of lifestyle changes, they not only prevent homeowners from saving money, but also stall progress towards a cleaner future. Despite these challenges, however, it's still possible for homeowners to work with their HOA to revise their bylaws. By updating the HOA guidelines, homeowners can implement eco-friendly changes without fearing denial from their HOA. Okay, so I was kind of surprised about this, being that I haven't heard about this, having restrictions on EV charging. But I wanted to just bring it up because and emphasize. If you are buying a home and you're in an area that you can't avoid buying into an HOA. And I know that a lot of folks say, I'm never going to buy an HOA, I'm never going to buy. But if you are in the southern states and you're buying new construction, a lot of the new construction subdivisions are in an HOA. It may not be an HOA where, a condo type of HOA. It could be an HOA where you own the land. It's a single family HOA. However, what a lot of communities are doing is instead of increasing the strain on the town to have the town now, absorb the cost of road maintenance and cleaning. And if you're, if you're in the Northeast area, snow plowing and so forth, they are now, making it a requirement for approval of the subdivision with the builder to have the builder set up an HOA so the HOA covers those costs. So a brand new subdivision, even though you own the home and all the things, you may not have a choice. If there may not be a lot of choices that are not HOA. So what do? You gotta read the fine print. My recommendation always on the HOA is yes, read it, but if you can, have an attorney read those docs. Not only the rules and regulations, get into the master deed. Get into the master deed, the bylaws. You want to read all the fine print. And the master policy, the master trust policy, gosh, my word, I'm not having a hard time finding words tonight, guys. The master policy, the master HOA policy, it can be, there's a lot of legalese and it can be extensive. I mean, I've seen them where they're 100 pages. And if you are not comfortable reading through that, if you don't understand everything that you're reading, it's worth paying an attorney a few bucks to read it for you and go through it and make sure that there's no surprises. If you have an EV, electric vehicle, and this is something that you're concerned about, ask the attorney, say, listen, I have an EV. I want to buy in this HOA. Is this going to be a problem? And then if it's not in the HOA and the HOA starts giving you problems, well, then there's a different level of problems. All right, I'll jump over to chat here. See who's in the house here. We got Sydney. Sydney says, so far, no increased inventory in the sort of house I want in New York's Finger Lakes region. Patience. It's coming. It's coming. It's coming. It's coming. Uh, you'll be there. Pavlov's dog. Hey, John, caught you live. Yay! Awesome, awesome. Sellers being price stubborn here in Valdosta. Valdosta. Am I saying that correctly? South Georgia, near the Florida state line. Yeah, it's amazing to me, amazing that sellers are still being a stick in the mud. Yes, there's a lot of fear. Yes, there's um, a lot of financial concern, especially if you're heading into or in retirement and you need to sell, and this is your nest egg. This is your nest egg. You don't have a huge fat 401k or a pension to fall back on. Your house is it. And so it is kind of devastating. However, you can't take blood from a stone from as far as the home value is concerned. It says, will you be following the big beautiful bill funding for USDA made it through underwriting, but no, yeah. So I actually saw a little bit of a snippet on that. I am not going to cover that this week because I want to dig into that further. And I'll probably I'm going to dig into it probably next week because I want to research. I want to understand exactly what the ramifications are and all the things. So, yes, I will be digging into that. I'm actually gonna uh make a note because Lord knows if I don't write these things down, forget about it. Um we got Rijo, hello from Frankfurt. How do you deal with buyers canceling? I had two buyers saying that they wanted to buy a flat, but both canceled and made me waste 3 months of time. How do I avoid this? Oh, we can get into this. We can definitely get into this. That's a tough situation, and I know that that is happening across the board. I was talking to my good friend Jackie Baker yesterday about that, and she is she's helping, she's representing a home seller that I referred to her, and they had it done to them 3 times. And there are certain measures that you can take for, having your agent vet out your buyer. I think that's probably the biggest tool in your tool belt. The biggest thing that you could possibly be proactive on is make sure that you have an agent that has experiential knowledge. And what do I mean by that? That means that they've been there, done that. Ideally, the agent's been around since, was here during the great financial crisis, and we had a lot of challenging times in terms of negotiating prices and so forth, ideally. But having an agent that has been there, done that, and can see some red flags. When I look at a buyer, I look at their pre-approval letter. I look at their pre-approval letter and say, okay, how much are they pre-approved for versus how much are they purchasing the house for? I mean, back in the day, a lot of mortgage lenders, well, they'll still do that today, where they'll write a pre-approval letter for the exact amount of the purchase price because they don't want to give away how much they can buy. And I get that methodology, but as a seller, when you're sitting there as a seller, if they're approved for 700,000 and they're spending 600,000, that gives you a sense of security, okay, a little comfort, a little cushion if all of a sudden the rates go up. If all of a sudden, things shift. But you know, one of the I would probably ask Raja, why did they cancel? Why did they cancel? That would be the questions that I would, if they're going to cancel, look at the reasons why and then see if it's something that is just outlandish that they could have maybe done something, but not you can't, unfortunately, I think it's a state of affairs. I think there's so much economic uncertainty. I think that we're going to be seeing a lot more of that. Bird Passion says, here in California, my HOA is installing EV charging stations. That makes sense. That's pretty awesome, actually. Zerthia says, hey there. How's it going? Thanks for being here. We got Landy Barbera in the house. I'm starting to see a trend where sellers aren't willing to accept home sale contingencies. We're getting ready to buy, but have to sell ours first, but we don't have the option to be homeless. Nor does anyone. That's definitely not a good way to go. Not on your options, your backup. That's not your plan B to be homeless. Mm. But in terms of a home sale contingency, I mean, you look at it from a seller's point of view. From a home seller, when you're in an area, you're in a market where things are starting to unravel, where it's more of an unknown versus say 5 years ago, 3 years ago, where if somebody came to you with a home sale contingency, you were pretty confident. you could be confident, not be so nervous that what if that house doesn't sell? Well, everything's selling, so the risk is less. Now, the risk is higher. And a home seller that doesn't know how long it's going to take to sell your house. I mean, I think the big thing with home sale contingencies is the pressure is going to be put on your buyer's agent to really provide data and information to that listing agent. That buyer's agent has to go to bat for you. You have to have a buyer's agent that's on their toes to really, really act. It's almost like act. If they're not listing your house, they've got to act like act as if they're listing their house. If they're not listing your house, they need to talk to the agent that is listing your house and find out what's the situation. Find out what the median days to offer is in your area, and and what your average sale price is, and where you're pricing, and your comps, and all the things. It's almost like you should give them a full market analysis to sell them on the idea that your agent's going to help you price it right and not have it sit on the market for 3 months. But you've got to be able to demonstrate that, and it's not. A lot of folks think that a lot of agents will do this, where they just package the stuff up and email over to the buyer, seller, the listing agent, and that's how they present offers. And that's BS. That is not how you present an offer. Back in my day, I'm gonna say this. Back in my day, uh, market was 1996 when I got my license. We didn't have computers. We didn't even have a fax machine. Everything was done in person, and in a lot of ways, that was hugely beneficial to the seller. Now, it's not ideal. It's not necessarily the sellers don't necessarily want that nowadays because of all the advancements we've had since then, but the benefit to doing it that way is the buyer's agent, or the person representing. This is before buyer agency. We didn't have buyer agency when I got my license, but when the agent, when you're representing a buyer, you're sitting across from the seller, and when you're sitting across from the seller, now you're selling the seller on your buyer. You're actually having to explain all the credentials and how strong of a buyer, all the things that the buyer brings to the table, and that's not the case now. And that's why real estate agents have become super lazy. In my opinion. Not all, because I know some pretty darn hardworking agents. We got Angie, Mad Cat. Good to see you there, my friend. Um, let's see here. We've got Teresa. Teresa Panic says, Ives says, I'm not sure where. Oh, maybe WV Kentucky Ohio border market still market is neutral still. Maybe you're talking about buyer's market versus seller's market. Actually, if that's what you're talking about, we're going to talk about that data in a second. We got Clark in the house. Good to see you, my friend. Angie says, I won't let potential buyers make an appointment to look at my home without vetting pre-approval. A lot of home sellers are doing that. And you know what? I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think that things get crazy. I think it's more work for the listing agent to go through that process and ask the buyers, buyer agents. And I know buyer agents get a little ticked off, whatever. Tough. Too bad. Too bad. So sad. I think that that's a very awesome proactive thing, because who wants tire kickers in your house? For the same reason why I'm not a huge fan of open houses, and I know that there's some that are, but let's see here. We've got Miss H says, hello, Jim. My first time catching you live. All right. Anyway, yeah, my for some reason my chat doesn't do well with emojis. But welcome. Zach says, good afternoon. Just got my house under contract. Woohoo! Congratulations. They did a roof inspection right on and took our pre-inspection. Says, soon we will get back what we want to be fixed. Any advice? My advice would be to be realistic, be open, be reasonable. I think that's the one thing that I always coach my home sellers is you want to be reasonable. You want to see if the buyers are asking anything, is it safety related? And, and is it reasonable? I mean, if you got to put yourself in the buyer's shoes, Yes, they're going to push. And yes, depending on the skill of the buyer agent, which you have no control over. I had a situation. I closed on a property last week where the buyer agent literally was just a paper pusher. Like all he did was, forward, emails or, forward emails and forward text messages. Not a whole lot of negotiation. The flip side, though, transaction I closed a couple weeks before that, the buyer's agent was on point. I was actually flip. I take that back. I was the buyer. I was representing the buyers. He was representing the sellers, and there was some back and forth. But we got on the phone. We worked it out and all the things to get to the point where we were both, getting some meet in the middle on the reasonable items. But yeah, I would say you've got to lean into your listing agent in terms of, what is reasonable. Um, and at the end of the day, if your market's a tight market, if the market is, things are sitting on the market for a while and it's a good offer, you may not want to lose the buyer. It depends. Uh, Andrew says, if you're not approved to buy a house, you don't need to be wasting anyone's time. Amen. 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 Um, Sandy says, hi, I'm leaving because YouTube notified me 16 minutes. What? Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know about that. I don't have any pull up in the YouTube sphere as far as how they do their stuff. So, anyways, let's. That's okay. We're just did some breaking news article. Now we're gonna get into some housing market stuff. So this article was actually dropped over a week ago, but it was updated today with some new data. And Redfin does a pretty good job with breaking down what's happening. Just 28% of homes are selling above asking price, lowest springtime level since 2020. Um, it says just over 28% of U.S. homes are selling above asking price, down from 32% a year earlier. That's the lowest level for this time of year since 2020, when the start of the pandemic ground the housing market to a halt. That's one signal of the shift towards a buyer's market in much of the country. Um, it says here are some other data points illustrating the tilt in buyers' favor and the slower than usual spring market data is. This data is from 4 weeks ending June 8th. The National Association of Realtors, which is the on a lot of this data, is where all of these articles pull from, because the National Association of Realtors, most listings outside of the for sale by owners, but most listings, when they're traveled through and handled by realtors, they have access to that data. And they are posting, I think it's June 25th. So in a week, they'll have their updated data. So this data is a couple weeks old, but they haven't posted the most recent data. But nonetheless, some data points that they're watching. It says the pending sales, which we know are down. Pending U.S. home sales fell 1.1% year over year to their lowest level from this time of year in our records. Just one third, 37.6% of homes went under contract within 2 weeks. So it's taken longer. There's fewer people, a lot of buyers pulling back. Also, the lowest level for this time of year since 2020. There has been a big gap between the median list price and the median sale price for the last several weeks. The median sale price was $397,000, a $28,950 discount, 7% from the median list price of roughly $425,950. For comparison, the median sale price was typically much higher than the median list price when the market was favoring sellers in 21-22. The problem I have with a lot of this data, okay? The problem I have with a lot of this data is that the data that we're comparing it to, it sounds catastrophic. And it is absolutely negatively going to impact the market from where we are. However, we were at such an artificially inflated, bloated market during COVID, where we had sales that didn't make sense, sale prices that didn't make sense, that were so out of whack with what normally would happen. Any adjustments now are not really telling the whole story. It's kind of I always say that equity is money that is not real. You look in your 401k or you look in your savings account. It's a better example. You look in your savings account, you have $1,000. You can go to the bank, pull out $1,000. That money is real. It's yours. It's not going to change unless somebody steals it, right? Equity is not real. It is something that is projected. It's just like the stock market. It's projected money. It's projected income. It's projected value. It's not, unless you're actually taking it out at the time, you're not technically losing money. Now, if you mean to take it out, you don't take it out and all the things, then you're like, "Oh, geez, I could have had $10,000 more. I could have had $20,000 more." But you gotta be careful. You gotta be really careful spending money that you don't have. You have to be really careful earmarking that money for a purchase when you don't have that money yet. It's predicated on selling the property and getting it into your bank account. Once it's in your bank account, it's real. Until that point, it's not. So when we see these numbers and they were overinflated during 21 and 22, and now things are starting to come down to reality, this is a good thing. I think all of these adjustments, as painful as they may be on the seller side, as painful as the interest rates are on the buyer side, this low, ridiculous 2% interest rates, 2.5% interest rates, and ridiculous increases in values, it wasn't normal, it wasn't real, and people got used to it. And now the market's shifting, and you say, "Oh gosh, it fell 1.1%." Well, it's coming down from a high. You're like, "Why can't we live this life every day?" Well, it's because you're on vacation. We're on a housing market vacation for like several years. And now it's down to reality, and it's not so much fun. It's not so much fun, but it's needed. We've got to there's no way we can continue. There's no way we were going to continue at this pace. Uh it says typical sale price is near $30,000 lower than the typical list price. And this now they're talking about the gap. The reason, and I've talked about this before, but when you look at these gaps, this is 100% a reflection of um, part market shifting, but the seller in conjunction with the agent. Sometimes it's on one side, sometimes it's on the other, but it's all about pricing. It is so important. If you are getting ready to sell your house right now, you've got to look at recent data. You've got to look at recent data, not 6 months. And depending on your market, maybe not even 3 months. You've got to look at 1 month. You've got to look at 2 months. And if you don't have data to pull for comparables, you've got to take that 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 month, data, and you've got to adjust it downward. You've got to have it, you've got to accommodate for the softening in your market. You've got to understand, the agent has to understand, what is going on as a market as a whole, and then apply those to the comps that you're using. This is, in my opinion, this is why we're in the market we're in. It's not that the sale price dropped $30,000. I truly don't believe that. I think it's softening. I totally do, but I think that the softening is as a result of prices that haven't been adjusted to reflect the current demand. If these prices, imagine if everybody priced the house according to what a buyer is willing to pay, yes, it would be softening, but these prices wouldn't be sitting on the market for 6 months, 3 months, 2 months. But just my opinion. Uh, let's see here. Let's see. Miss H says, question. Back in the 90s, home, I put my home I still have for sale. Didn't want anyone walking through, so I asked the agent to not put a for sale sign in the yard. How would one do that now with Zillow, etc.? So it can be done. My question to you would be, what is your goal? What are you concerned about? Making sure your agent understands what your concerns are. If you are looking for ultimate privacy, you really want a quiet sale. You don't want, and you know what? People that are in the spotlight, people are in the limelight, celebrities and whatever, anyone in the political sphere, they don't want necessarily to be on public notice that their house is for sale. You can do that, but understand that when you limit your visibility, it will lengthen your time to sell. It's gonna be harder to find a buyer. Not only will it be harder to find a buyer, but you limit your chances of getting a higher sale price. The more competition you have, the more buyers, the more potential that, you push that sale price up a little bit. So it's gonna take longer. Can you sell it without a for sale sign in your front yard? Yeah, sure you can. Some people, I've had some clients that are just like, I don't want to have nosy people driving by my house and stopping in front of my house. Well, they may be doing that anyways because it's online. The problem is that when you put your house into multiple listing, if you're going to either use an agent or if you're going to FISBO it and you say, pay, there's some discount brokerages out there that will list your home in MLS for, a small, for a fee. When it goes into multiple listing, which is truly the best way to reach the most number of buyers, the most number of buyers agents, it is automatically going to go out to all the different websites because all the websites come from MLS. You can't stop one website. You can't because all these websites, the Zillow, the Redfin, the Realtor.com, all of them have agreements with the local MLSs to share data. The only way to keep it out is to not list it in MLS. And that's your choice. I don't recommend it, but that is your choice. So I hope that answers your question. Um, let's see here. We got Gina. Hey, thanks so much. You got a little super chat action. Thank you so much. Very kind of you. I appreciate that. This is, hi, I want to buy a house in Florida, a second property. I was asked to sign a contract with a realtor. It is a bit complex to read, and I asked to make it easier to understand. I just want to see a house. I feel your pain. I feel your pain. I had an agent reach out to me last week. I featured it in my live stream last week. Will not name who that agent is. I was blown away. She sent me an email direct complaining about all the information I give you guys. And she said that she's in Florida and been doing real estate a long time. And she said that the buyer contracts, the way it's written, the Florida buyer agency contracts are very confusing. I pulled it up. I researched the buyer agent contracts in Florida. It is very confusing. You have to actually check off a box to make sure that you get representation, which is ludicrous. Just because you sign an agreement doesn't mean that that's signing the agreement for them to represent you. You're signing the agreement, agreeing to pay them. For what? I have no idea. Because if you don't, they're not offering you representation. I don't know why you would sign it. That being said, I understand your struggle, but I'm going to implore you. I'm going to encourage you to ask for clarification, either, consult an attorney. Now this is not a replacement for an attorney. I lean on ChatGPT a lot. If you're comfortable doing that, you could have ChatGPT say, give me the boiled down version or whatever not. Is it a guarantee that it's going to be protecting you 100%? Of course not. But is it helpful to understand? Yeah. If you're just looking to see one house and you're not necessarily interviewing that, you're not having a chance to interview an agent, you don't have time to interview agents, you're not sure really what you're doing, you don't want to commit. The one thing I would say is make sure that it is written somewhere on that contract that contract is for that day only, for that property only. That day, that property. You are under no obligation to use that agent again in the future. And that puts the agent on notice. And you know what? Some agents are going to be really upset with me saying that. I don't care, because that agent needs to demonstrate value. And if all they're doing is giving you a contract, that doesn't give you a chance to give them a chance to demonstrate value. They're not demonstrating value. Demonstrating value is getting on a Zoom call when you're ready, spending an hour and a half talking about you and what your needs are and what you want and what's important to you. And then you are at the same time getting a chance to see how well this agent listens and what's their level of expertise and what's the level of experiential knowledge. If you have a chance to do that, no, He's not signing a long time contract. That's would be the one thing that I would say is watch the wording, yes, but the time. Don't commit to a long-term contract until you have a chance to do your due diligence. I hope that answers that. I hope that puts your mind a little bit at ease. Um, let's see. Yeah, Angie says you can sign for just a one-time showing. Yep, 110%. And you know what? If that agent that you're calling, I would not recommend calling the listing agent. But if that agent doesn't do it, just go to another agent. Just go to another agent. Just go on Zillow and go with one of the agents that if that's all you want to do. If all you want to do is just get in the house, go through the contract, make sure that it is one day, one property, one time, that's it. You don't owe them any money. There's no fees or anything of that nature, and then be done with it. Miss H says, getting lots of offers from these investors wanting to buy properties. Do you know how they come up with what they want to offer homeowners? Some are 30,000 above, others don't understand. Yeah, so when it comes to an investor buying properties, all they care about is the bottom line. The bottom line, they look at a property and they say, okay, what potentially could be wrong with this property? What's it going to cost them to renovate it? They take it, they look at their net sheet. They look at what their financial risk is and what, every investor is going to be a little different. Some investors, are more risk adverse. Some are not. If they have a big portfolio, they can take a gamble. I saw this a lot when I was selling, representing banks, pre-COVID. I was representing banks during foreclosures, and I clearly there were wannabe investors, new time investors, first time investors that would come in super low because they didn't have enough cushion. They didn't have enough insurance. They didn't have enough reserves to cover in case things went south. They got in there and they have to rip out walls, and they weren't expecting that. And then you had the professional investors that do a big book of business. And if it ends up costing them another 50 grand that they weren't expecting, they can absorb it. They have the ability to absorb it because they have multiple properties. So that's I hope that answers your question there, because it is a little bit subjective. Sydney says, as a buyer in a terrible inventory market, I let my pre-approval lapse. If I suddenly see a house I really like, I might want to walk through to confirm I really like it. Pre-app can go fast. So I think you're asking. I'm not quite sure I'm not sure what you're asking per se here, but one thing that I would recommend is that if you are looking at houses online, literally like you're sitting on your sofa at night and you're looking at it from the standpoint of, hey, if the right house comes along, I might be curious enough to go see it. Just get your pre-approval. Get your pre-approval updated. Most lenders, all they need to do is they run your credit. They update they may collect a few docs to make sure that you're still employed and your income's still the same and all the things. Not a big deal. It's not a big deal if you're using the same lender. But get it pre-approved, because like Angie Madcat says, if you come across a seller that wants that pre-approval before you even step through the door, you may lose out on that opportunity. Number two, if you fall in love with the house, you're like, oh my God, this is it. This is it. This is it. This is it. Seller's reasonable. It's a reasonable price. I don't want to miss out. You may not have the time to get an updated pre-approval. I know when I'm representing sellers as a listing agent, if I receive an offer that has an expired pre-approval, it goes to the bottom of the pile. And if I have multiple offers and the buyer says, the buyer's agent says, oh, well, we'll get it, it's Friday afternoon and the lender will have it Monday morning, that might be too late. Because, and the fact of the matter is, I mean, if it's a good offer, but an offer without an active current pre-approval is not an offer. It's an interested buyer, but if you have another buyer that is equal or stronger and ready to go, you could lose out. So definitely make sure that that thing is in your back pocket, especially in this market, because as this market changes, and we're going to see a lot more changes coming, in the near future. We're going to be seeing this market evolve. It's going to be spreading across the country. Things are softening, across the board. And you may see that seller that's completely unrealistic. All of a sudden, they're like, okay, I'm done. I get it. Uncle, I will lower my price. And you're like, great, finally, within my price range and it's reasonable. It's what I want to pay. And you want to be prepared for that. Um, Anthony, welcome. Anthony says, I would like to hear your thoughts on selling an inherited 100-year-old house that's been occupied by the same family for 56 years. I was told to sell it as is and not spend money updating it. You know, it's funny that you ask this question, Anthony, because I am at this very moment getting ready to film a video all about this that will be posted next week. And so, sorry, I get it. If I don't drink my throat honey tea here, I lose my voice during these live streams. But in any event, so here's the thing, and I'm in Plymouth. Plymouth is one of the oldest towns in the country. We have homes that are, we have still some homes in the 1600s. Most are, 1800s, maybe a few 1700s, 1800s, 1900s, early 1900s. So I'm very familiar with this situation. It really depends. If they've done nothing to the house, my advice is going to be clean it, clean it out, declutter it, all the things, try to pack up. If the house has to be sold while people are still living there, you want to go through the exercise of getting rid of as much as anything that you're not taking with you. Got to get rid of it. Get rid of it, give it away, sell it, wherever the destination is, that needs to happen before it goes on the market. So declutter, purge, all the things, clean it, top to bottom. That's the thing that I would recommend. And then the third thing would be is look at safety and maintenance. Now, if you have a furnace or heating system that is not the original, or not, or close. I mean, we have some. Gosh, I've seen boilers wrapped in asbestos here. That yeah, it's not so much in the last probably 10, 15 years, but I've seen some scary boilers. But if the heating system is older, have it serviced, have it cleaned, and then having a tag, having an invoice or a service record for a buyer to say, hey, listen, this is older, but it's functional, could go miles for you. But looking at that, do what you can, but look at the safety concerns. If you have a 100-year-old house, if you have knob and tube wiring, you may want to consider having it removed or at least disclosing it, but at the very least, make sure that it's safe. You want to look at safety, but I would start with the cleaning. I would, don't do any updates. I would not do any updates. Focus on the maintenance. If the roof is leaking, then you gotta repair the roof. If not replace it, at least repair it. So, let me know if you need more info on that. Let's see. TJ Adam? Is it Adam or Adam A? Based on last, do you refer a buyer's agent? I do. I know my channel, I focus on, helping home sellers, but absolutely I refer buyer's agents all the time because most of the agents in my tight knit, my 20 percenters, if you've watched my content, then you've heard me talk about that 80% versus 20%, which to be honest is probably more like 90-10, where the 80% represents the part of the industry, which is, in my opinion, deplorable. It's after being in this industry almost 30 years. It's just the state of affairs is getting sadder. Talked to a couple of my referral agents earlier today, and it's just it just boggles my mind. How lazy, and there's going to be a bigger divide as we progress because this market is going to get tougher. But there is a sliver, and that sliver, those 20, I call them like my 20 percenters, which is probably my 10 percenters, to be honest. Those agents that I vetted and have done the research, but also have, I've made sure that they do business the way I do business, that hold them to that high standard, they work with buyers and sellers, alike. So yes, and long-winded answer to your question. um, let's see. Okay. D says update. She isn't talking about this planet. No idea what you're talking about. Oh boy, let's see. A cactus lonesome says, "Do you need a pre-approval if you're all cash offer?" No, but what you do need is proof of funds. So what that is either a letter, preferably a letter, wherever the money's coming from. You've got to prove to the seller that you actually have the money. So you get a letter from your financial institution, or if it's investments, or if you have a financial advisor, they can write a letter, and just a letter stating that, if you're, if you're using $500,000, to purchase a property, you need something from a financial institution that says that you have $500,000 cash. Um, I have seen bank statements, and that's fine. But what you want to do is you absolutely want to black out the account numbers, black out all the other information. The only thing I don't like about using a bank statement is now, unless you have close to that amount of money in that bank statement, you're showing making it public on how much money you have, at your disposal. Um, which, it may or may not be a great thing if it's a financial advisor and it's, and you're pulling out a 401k or whatnot, maybe not so bad. But, I'm not crazy about that. I'd rather have you produce a letter, and those are not hard to have. Your bank can issue a letter. Check with your bank. Sometimes you have to make an appointment and request it. It takes like a day, but that's similar to a pre-approval. I would have that on hand because you're going to want to have that when you present an offer. Um, let's see here. Uh, we got Leslie from Pflugerville. Welcome, welcome. Miss H says, what would be the lowest credit score a buyer could have for VA or USDA loans? Getting different info from some people, it seems that they don't understand how things work for loans. Yeah, you know what? Working with a lender is similar to working with a real estate agent. You need to interview multiple lenders because they're in the same category. They really are. Just because you are it's a lot stricter, requirements to be able to, write mortgages, to be a loan originator. But they don't always know what they're talking about, for sure. I cannot tell you, in all honesty, what the current credit score requirements are for VA and USDA loans. I can't tell you that. I honestly don't know where they're at. That being said, you might see a little bit of fluctuation, and the reason I say that is because of what's happening with student loans. Student loans never used to affect your credit score. Now they do. And we have a lot of, across the country, student loan borrowers are they're becoming late when they made the changes. The administration made those changes to the student loans, and how those student loans, the payback, and they put a freeze on, you know, making those, what's the word I'm looking for? Not reamortization is not a mortgage, but when they stopped working with you as far as the amount that you pay back, and moratorium on student loans ended, a lot of borrowers are in tough situations that can now negatively affect your credit score. And now you've got a situation where you've got somebody who makes good enough money. Maybe they're not back on board paying the loans, but the damage has already been done, and it takes years to have that, build that credit score back up. You might see some to help buyers get into properties. You might see the VA, USDA, FHA lower them. You might see that. I've seen it happen during the blips that we've had in the economy over the years. I've seen that happen. So I hope that helps. I want to dig into just a little bit more of this data on what is actually, the indicators and stuff like that. Um, And then I want to jump over to the mortgages and what's happening with the mortgages and so forth, because there's some movement on that as well. This article, this Redfin article went on to say, prospective homebuyers have been sidelined, economic uncertainty, which I've been talking about for a hot second here, a couple weeks, several weeks, month. There's been a lot of economic uncertainty. High housing costs. The median monthly housing payment, it just keeps going up. It's $29 shy of a record high. Um, and it's still tough for many Americans to buy a home, as affordability remains a challenge. We all know these things. It says on the selling side, new listings are up 5.2%. And then here's the other thing that's interesting. It says, worth noting that mortgage purchase applications are up 10% week over week, signaling that pending home sales could improve soon. So some recent data, which is interesting. It's something to keep an eye on, which is why I think you guys need to update those pre-approvals now. The daily average 30-year fixed rate mortgage, I'm going to show that data in a second, down from 6.9%. The mortgage applications up 10%. Touring activity. So these are the number of people that are starting to walk through homes, up 23% from the start of the year. This is why when you see in the headlines that home sales are down, they're down 1.1%. So last year, oh my God, nobody's buying a house, nobody's buying a house, nobody's buying a house. Not so. Not that they don't want to buy a house, because the touring activity is how many people are out looking at homes. They're not pulling the trigger because the homes may be still way overpriced because the sellers aren't in line with what the market is, or the interest rates are pushing their mortgage payment up too high. So they're gauging on whether that seller's going to come down or their interest rates are going to come down, but they want to buy. This touring activity up 23% is significant, which goes in line with why mortgage applications are up 10%. And then Google searches home for sale up 16% from a month earlier. This data right here tells me that people, when the timing is right, people are going to take advantage of it. Buyers are going to take advantage of it. I want to jump over to just real quick. I pulled up on the Mortgage Bankers Association. I wanted to see what they said. This was June 11th, and it says mortgage applications actually increased 12.5% from a week earlier. This is on June 11th. This was a week ago, a little over, last Wednesday. Mortgage applications increased. Let's see, for the week ending June 6th. Okay. Last week's results included an adjustment for Memorial Day holiday. Coming out of the Memorial Day holiday, mortgage applications increased to the highest level in over a month, driven by growth in both purchase and refinance applications. Treasury rates saw some movement during the week, which resulted in additional opportunities for borrowers. Now, the rates they went up, they went down. This is where, as of today, this is the mortgage news dailies at 6.88%. So if we looked at the 12th, which would have been, that would have been last Thursday. It did shoot up, on the 6th. But you can see what they're talking about here when they jump down to 6.87%. This dip right here, a lot of people jumped and put their mortgage applications, but that's not a huge adjustment. So it makes me that piece of data makes me pause, because of the fact that it may be a signal that it could be a late spring market. And we heard that the last couple of years when, the market last year, same thing. It was, we didn't think the market was going to happen. And then maybe the market was going to be delayed and so on and so forth. It might be that situation now. And I'm not even paying attention to the predictions for the rest of the year. I think they're all bogus anyways, because nobody really knows what's happening, because there's so many factors, government factors, which, I mean, honestly, the current administration, all they need to do is sneeze a certain way, and this side, whatever buyers, if somebody gets the impression that something negative or positive is going to happen, it affects the market. but we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know that. That's why I need to be prepared. Be prepared, be prepared. Having the mortgage applications increase is very, very interesting. It's very, very interesting. I'm going to jump over to chat real quick. Yeah. You guys have questions, drop them in the chat. We got a real active chat. I love it. Love it, love it, love it when you guys are asking questions. I love this is my one time of the week I get to talk to you guys. Let's see. Okay, Landy says, sorry, I did catch up where I was. As an individual, if you post your coming soon home on Facebook groups, do you risk your house being banned from Zillow if the house isn't in the MLS yet? So here's here's my hot take on that. I know Zillow's playing games because Zillow is technically, they're not just a website, they're a broker. Zillow is a real estate agent, a real estate company. And because of that, a lot of what they do is for profit. And which is not made. It doesn't come to the surface when they start putting all these policies about how the listings are in place and all the things. I know there's a lot of nonsense with what's happening, the policies that they rolled out over the last 30 days, in terms of what you can and what you can't do and all the things. My suggestion is this. If you have a coming soon in a Facebook group, I understand why someone would think that would help. This is my opinion based on, again, experiential knowledge. Just my experience on what I've seen, particularly the last 10 years, in terms of social media. Buyers don't buy houses on social media. They just don't. And yes, somebody will say in the comments, I bought my house because I saw it on Facebook. Well, good. Awesome. There's always a one-off. I bought my house at an open house. Great. There's always a one-off. However, if you look at the big picture on what is normal, what is historically the best way to get in front of people, it is not through Facebook groups. I'm sorry. I don't post I don't post listings. I stopped doing that. It's a waste of time. It doesn't help you get the word out. And I know a lot of agents do that. They put the little videos and the walkthroughs and all the things. At the end of the day, to reach buyers, you got to go where buyers are hanging out. When you're sitting on your sofa watching TV, where do you go when you're looking for houses? Ask yourself that. Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com. That's where you're going to go. That's where you're going to go. You're going to go to the mainstream. And I would just question. And again, I'm not trying to cut out real estate agents at the knees for going on Facebook groups. I just wouldn't put a lot of value in it personally. Me personally. If you approach it that way, then it's not an issue. The other thing with coming soon, check with your ask your agent what the local MLS allows. Every MLS is a little different. Here where I'm at in Massachusetts, the MLS system that we belong to actually allows a coming soon election. So we can actually go into MLS as a coming soon. And when it goes into MLS as a coming soon, now it goes out to all the websites as coming soon. There is a restriction on how far in advance you can do that. Because I do think that there's some value in doing that to try to stir up interest. But you want to check with your agent on that to see, what kind of options you have. This is Chikra. Check you maybe. Will it behoove me to hire an agent who knows my particular area well, or an agent who sells all over the country? Okay, I feel very strongly about this. You gotta know the local market. Hands down, you gotta know the local market. Now, there is a caveat to that. Depending on where you're at in the country, Alabama comes to mind because I have a great 20% agent in Alabama. And in talking to her, because of the way because there's a lot of open land. There's a lot of communities that have very few real estate agents, and for that reason, the agents travel. They're accustomed to. It's not a big deal for them to travel an hour to get to a listing. Here, I would never do that. I know a lot of agents do. I would never do that. Um, so for that reason, they make it their mission to research the markets that they're going into. Can you do it? Yes, you can certainly do that. Can you go on MLS and study the market? Yes, you can. At this 2025, you can absolutely do that. However, across the country, that's if you're in the multiple listing service for that property. If you have an agent who sells all over the country, they better be part of the MLS that in the area that you're looking in. But I would just question if they know that how well they know the market. Here's what I would put the question to you. If they're selling you, they're going to help you buy a house, and a local agent knows that a subdivision on that beautiful, serene lot that's across the street, that is so picturesque, that is so it's so quaint and quiet in this area that you're choosing to live in. A local agent might know that the planning board is about to approve a 50 lot subdivision across the street. And they're going to start breaking ground next year. And now you're going to be listening to trucks driving in front of your house for years. Goodbye, quiet, retreat, atmosphere, lot. Peace and quiet, goodbye. An agent that doesn't know that market, an agent that has just access to MLS, and I actually, you know what, I've had some folks that have reached out to me that have asked me to list property that are outside my area, north of Boston, and because they really want to hire me and all the things, and I am so flattered. I'm so flattered. I'm so grateful, and I turn them down. I say, I'm sorry, I can't do it because it's not in your best interest for me to do this. Let me get you in touch with an agent that knows the market, because I wouldn't know. I mean, yes, you can go through all the rigmarole of checking with the planning board and reading all the news articles and all the hubbub and all the things. I'll give you another example. My good friend, Jackie Baker down in Jersey, she is very in tune with her local market. She knows that there is a Netflix studio that is coming to the area. She knows where it's happening. She knows the time frame. She knows how it's going to impact the local area because she's in tune. I would never know that. I know because of her, but other than that, I have no idea. It's not even, they just broke ground. But before that, what if you bought the house 6 months ago and you didn't know? That's the danger in dealing with with an agent that doesn't know the local market. I always try to get an agent. I always say, try to get as much as you can. Get an agent that sells in the area that you want to either sell or buy in. Let's see. Anthony says, thanks. I look forward to your video on that subject. Yes. Talk about old dated homes. Will that video discuss disclosure lists when it comes out and who sees it? Yes. Yep. I always talk. I am a big fan of disclosures. Here's the thing. I am a fan of doing the right thing, even if there's no monetary value. Just do the right thing. Imagine yourself on the other side. And I've had plenty of comments where people said, "Oh, you know what? After it closes, not my problem." Well, you know what? Karma has a funny way of working its way out. You might be on the other side of that someday. But more importantly, how about we just do it? And that whole not my problem philosophy. How about we do the right thing? Do the right thing. Doesn't mean it has to cost you thousands of dollars, but how about, these buyers that are buying in this market that we're in, just tell them, let them decide if it's important to them or not. And it's not about scaring people away. The right buyer won't be scared away. The right buyer might even feel better about the house because you're being upfront. You're being upfront with them. Listen, this house has some warts. This house has some warts, and I'm going to tell you up front. And you're not interested? That's cool. Why would you risk not telling them up front, and then you go through the process of having a accepted offer, you have a home inspection, and then they're going to find out anyways. They have a home inspection, and then they back out. Now you've lost all this time. You're going to go back on the market, and when a house goes back on the market after a home inspection, It is now in the real estate community considered a stigmatized property because what's wrong with it? What's wrong with it? Why did that buyer not want to buy that property? You don't really want that situation. So how about you just tell them up front. Disclose, disclose, disclose. And disclosures are going to differ on the state. I will tell you that right now. Every state is different. You want to check with your local, what the state requirements are, what your local requirements are. Everybody's different. Every area is different. Oh, we got a success story. Under contract, new construction closing in July. Woohoo! Fingers crossed that rates will drop. Oh, it's possible. It's possible. I'd be curious to know, Kevin, did they give you some good perks? Did you get any rate buy downs, or did you get any they give you anything? And where was it? What state was it in? Fantastic. I'll get my friend Christine Halverson in the house. Excellent. You're very welcome. Thanks for being here. Awesome sauce. Mimi 1984. My house is under contract after 2 weeks. Woo! Fantastic. What? Mimi, tell me where you're located. I want to know where your house, what town, what not the address, this the state. What state are you located in? Miss H says half of the people can't afford what the homeowners want. So when it changes and people understand there are more homes than buyers wanting to spend money, that's when I hope to look to buy again. And that day is coming. That day is coming because the reality of it is yeah, I had a conversation with a homeowner just recently about this. It doesn't matter what they want. And I'm sorry to tell you, as a home seller, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you need. It doesn't matter what you want. It doesn't matter that you know, X amount of dollars to get to your next house. It's irrelevant. Your house is worth what a buyer's willing to pay. Period. And when that house sits on the market, one of two things is going to happen. Either they're going to concede and the prices are going to come down, or they're going to take it off the market. Period. And I think there's a lot of home sellers that need to sell, especially if you're retiring or in retirement and you can't carry the house anymore. You can't. I think we're going to see a lot more price drops. I think we're going to see a lot more price corrections, as things soften and home sellers get to the breaking point. They get to the breaking point of, you know what? Fine. I will come down because I have no other choice. Oh, you're upstate New York. Very good. Very, very, very good. Yeah, upstate New York, the Northeast, it's softening, but it's definitely, houses are selling in shorter periods of time. Let's see. SRN Texan. Yeehaw. Proof of funds. 100% needed for cash buyers. Yes, nightmare in Connecticut when an agent brought a cash buyer. An agent wrote the deposit check. What? Huge learning experience as the whole situation was fraud. Oh, man. Yeah, I've done I've covered a couple news stories about agents pulling some shady stuff and you know what? They're everywhere. They are everywhere. Everybody's, a lot of these agents are looking for a quick buck. They think they can, pull the wool over you. And you need to be sharp. Your listing agent needs to be sharp. If you don't have a proof of funds written by a financial institution, a letter, if they don't present that to you, it's not an offer. Don't even think about accepting it. Doesn't matter how much they're offering. It's not real until they actually show you. Leslie says, question, why would you give a concession rather than lower the price? The net to the seller is the same. Lower price is better to mitigate chance of appraisal not coming in. I 100% agree. Yeah, you know what? When it comes to a concession, a lot of folks do that. I think that it's warranted when you do, say you have a dated home and it needs new flooring and you don't have the money for the flooring. You just don't. And You have a buyer who's interested and no other buyers on the table, but the offer is fair, and the one tripping point is the flooring. Then at that point, you say, "Hey, Mr. Buyer, would you be comfortable? I'll give you $5,000 credit to get the deal done." You could do that. Sometimes when doing that, puts the money into the buyer's pocket, which is one of the reasons why a lot of buyers want to do that. And I'll explain. So you have a purchase price of 500,000 with a 500,000 with a $5,000 credit. Okay, closing credit. When they get to the closing, that credit is going to be credited towards their closing costs, which means that's $5,000 that they don't have to come up with for either down, not down payment, but their actual prepaids and closing costs. Prepaids are, the taxes, and if they have any type of per diem interest, that type of thing, closing costs, or what it costs to actually get the mortgage, and so forth. So that $5,000 would put that money back in the buyer's pocket. If you take it off the price and now the price is $495, yes, the savings to the buyer's saving 5,000. However, if you're financing that over 30 years, honestly, at $5,000 is probably going to save you about $5 a month. It's not going to save you a ton of money. It is not going to save you a ton of money. And for them, it's more valuable, 5,000 bucks, especially in this economy, in their pocket. So I get what you're saying, but it's if we look past what is how it affects the seller and look at it from the buyer's perspective. Almost spilled my tea. I'm French. Can you tell I'm French? Quarter French, but nonetheless, I'm also Polish, so I'm clumsy as all heck. Um, but anyhow, not to digress here, but I hope that makes sense, Leslie. I hope that makes sense to you. Why every situation is a little bit different, but there are reasons. Here we go. Angie just answered the question there. Concessions can help buyers who don't have funds for closing, fixing items. There we go. Good job, Angie. Oh, Carol, this is usually fantastic. Love your comment on being upfront. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I think there's just too much, some word I'm looking for, evasiveness, or just cynicism, and sneaky, and all that. And I think that just, I don't know, doing the right thing is like, I don't know, become like you're losing money, you do the right thing. It's like, no. I think there's value. And then lo and behold, you have a buyer that appreciates you, and you don't have a nightmare transaction. And you have buyers and sellers that are working in unison because they both want the same goal, to get the house sold. That's it. They both have the same goal, to get the house sold. And when everybody's working in unison, boy, that's when magic happens. That's when good things happen. It doesn't mean that the seller's selling for less or the buyer's buying for more or any of that. It just means that you have a meeting of the minds. You have nobody, digging in on their heels and making things difficult. The only people that make out in that situation are your therapists. and, and the doctors, because you're all stressed out. Um, let's see. Sandy says FOMC is not expected to cut rates until September. Yeah, so the Fed's meeting tomorrow to talk about the Fed rate, but they're not expected to. I was reading that report today as well, as they're not expected to cut. Keeping in mind that for those, I want you guys to keep in mind that the Fed rate does not necessarily mean the mortgage rate is going to be impacted. The Fed could cut the rate 0.5%. It doesn't mean it really, the mortgage rates react to the Treasury, to the T-bonds and investors. It's more important what Wall Street does and how Wall Street reacts, and in the investor market on how the mortgage market reacts. In simple terms, in very, very simple terms. It's not one and one. They do typically, historically, run in parallel, but not always. Not always. We saw that last year. Last year, we saw the Feds cut rates significantly, and the mortgage interest rates didn't drop. Why? Because investors had already reacted before the rate cut to the news, the investor market had reacted, the mortgage market reacted, rates came down before the announcement. So when the announcement happened and the Fed actually cut the rate, the mortgage rates they'd already adjusted. Nothing happened. So food for thought. Um, yes, 100%. Not all sellers are bad. 110%. Uh, Bonnie says, I live in Western Pennsylvania and we were able to sell our home in 7 days once putting on the market. That's awesome because Pennsylvania's been seeing some corrections lately uh and having some struggles in that market. And the fact that you could get it done in a week means that um sounds like you had a good listing agent. It sounds like you were realistic, in tune with the market. So kudos to you, Bonnie. That's fantastic. Woohoo! Awesome, awesome. Mm. So I want to show you guys actually, I've got some time here. Um, I wanted to see if I can find yeah, this is the article that just to give you again, this data is from a week and a half ago, which seems like an eternity. But this is the 31 major housing markets that have shifted to buyers markets. It says this was interesting. Is why I highlighted. It says during the pandemic housing boom, demand surged. And this is just food for thought. Rapidly amid ultra low interest rates, stimulus relief, yada yada. We all know this. It says the Federal Reserve researchers estimate that new construction would have had to increase. Now you figure this is during the pandemic when things went bonkers in the housing market and uh, the demand was through the roof. People buying properties like crazy. In order to keep up with that demand, the researchers estimate that new construction would have had to increase by roughly 300% to absorb the pandemic era surge in demand. That is why we have a housing shortage. Period. It says, unlike housing demand, housing stock supply isn't as elastic and can't ramp up quickly. This is why it's going to take years, to see the other side of this. It says, as a result, the heightened pandemic era demand drained the market of active inventory and overheated home prices, with U.S. home prices rising a staggering 43.2%. So the reason why I'm pointing this out, and this is something to just keep in the back of your mind, if you have expectations of a market that is going to soften, and all of a sudden prices are just going to tank, and wait for prices to tank. In order for them truly to tank, we need more inventory to satisfy the number of buyers. Buyers will only sit stagnant for so long. If you're in a situation where you don't have to buy today, you're going to wait. You're going to wait. You're going to say, you know what? These sellers are not realistic. I'm going to wait. If you're in a situation where you have a house because you had a family member pass away and you can't hold it indefinitely, can't afford to carry it. You're in a house that you have a spouse pass away, or you're retired, or your kids moved out, whatever. And you can't carry that indefinitely. You don't want to carry it. Maybe just you're retiring and you've had an income shift, or maybe you're being relocated, or maybe you've had health issues. These are all things that will cause you to move regardless of the market. And to say that no buyers are going to buy and pull completely out is not realistic. It's not realistic. So yes, those people will continue to buy, but what about that person that doesn't want to go? They're like, I'm not going into a nursing home after I sell my house. I just need a smaller house. They're going to buy another house. They're not going to wait. They're not going to wait because we don't have enough inventory for the number of buyers versus the amount of available inventory. Yes, the buyers have pulled back. It's temporary. Eventually, those buyers will trickle in. I haven't stopped working. I put a listing on, it sells. Who's buying it? Oh, somebody. The buyers are out there. The buyers are out there. You guys are giving me stories on how you sold your house. Buyers are out there. Until that happens, if there's no buyers, then yes, we'll see prices tank. But that's not realistic. This graph, this is the estimated number of U.S. home buyers and sellers actively in the housing market. And this is where the disconnect is. So you've got this red line being the buyers. This was during the pandemic ridiculousness. And we've got the sellers humming along, and then the buyers. This is when, April 24, when things started to go south with interest rates, things started to cool off, and now here's the disconnect. We've got the disconnect of why we've got 500,000. But if we look at the number of buyers compared to, say, April 16, or even, April 19, before the pandemic, okay? And you've got the number of home sellers up 2.2 million. Look where they are now. This is what I was saying earlier in the show here, that just because it says that the number of sellers has increased, 500,000 sounds such like a lot of, it's a good amount of homes, but it doesn't tell the whole story. This is not a market crash. I, I'm telling you 30 years of experience, this is not a market crash. It's not. It's softening. It's not going to be fun for sellers for a while. But more importantly, I wanted to show you guys, this is the metro level analysis published May 2025. I also mentioned earlier the numbers from the National Association of Realtors that gets published monthly doesn't get released until, I think it's June 25th. So these numbers are what they have to base on. All this data is based on what the National Association of Realtors publishes. But what's interesting is the balance of power. Look at all the metros that are in a buyer's market at the moment. We have DC, Philadelphia, there we go. Philadelphia, balanced. Chicago, balanced means you price it right. Boston, which is interesting. Okay, I'm seeing that. I am absolutely seeing that we're more of it. We're not in a buyer's market, but we're not in a super strong seller's market. And the sellers, this will be gone by the end of the year. These will be all either balanced or heading into buyers. I can almost guarantee it. So Baltimore, Providence, Rhode Island, which is interesting, New Brunswick, New Jersey, Cleveland, Ohio, Montgomery County, PA, Nassau County, New York, Newark, New Jersey, all at the moment buyer's market, seller's market, but very, very soon shifting to balanced, and then joining the pack, which I thought was very interesting and very telling about what's happening. Let's see here. Let me get over to the chat here. Bonnie says, thanks for all of the tips. We were able to sell our house in 7 days. Woohoo! After putting on the market in Western Pennsylvania, real estate agent was quite impressed and how well prepared we are. Oh man, you guys have no idea how happy that makes me when I get a report back from one of my referral agents, and they tell me, they're like, holy cow, that was this home seller that I just met with, that I sent them, that I connected them with. I've never had a home seller ask me so many questions and be so on point and so up to date and ask me all the hard questions, and they're like blown away. That makes me so happy. Makes me, because I want you guys to be prepared. I really do. I really do. Let's see here. My stove needs a new igniter. Bummer. But no one sells them. Stove's 24 years old. I can't replace it because it's 42 inch, not 36. Should I give a credit? Yeah, you know what? Check to see. I mean, I would. And I'll tell you why. Depending on the house, here's the thing is, if you have a situation where the kitchen cabinets might need to be replaced, or they're a little bit older, the buyer may end up opting to remodel the kitchen. And the stove that you spent, $1,000 for, $500, $700, however much the stoves cost these days. I haven't bought a stove in a while. Hope I don't have to for a while. But it may be a waste of your money. It may be a waste of your money. I think a buyer would appreciate a credit more, because they can go buy whatever they want. They can buy whatever they want. They can buy stainless steel. They can want. I've heard some people say they don't want stainless steel. They want white or black. Okay, fine. Whatever floats your boat. Just tell them up front. And you know what? Honestly, then it saves you the headache of trying to pick one out. But just tell them up front and let them, and I think that having them, give them a credit. Um, Go talk to your listing agent about what your credit should be, because it might be the type of thing that you tell them up front you were going to give them a credit, or it might be the type of thing that you negotiate that during a home inspection. Uh, let's see. Oh, thank you so much. Jen's tips on preparing a home to get ready for sale help me so much. Makes me so happy. Angie says, call an appliance guy. We just had ours replaced. They can usually order from suppliers. That's a good suggestion, Angie. That's a good suggestion for sure. And here's the thing is talk to the appliance guy, get an estimate, get a time frame, but maybe don't do anything. So you talk to an appliance guy, he isolates the problem, he tells you how much it's going to cost, how long is it going to take, and then press pause. If he's like, oh yeah, it's not a big deal, I can get the part in 2 weeks or whatever, then how about just press pause. I've had home sellers do that, and then let the buyer decide. Be like, hey, Mr. Buyer, I can get this fixed. Do you want me to fix it? Or do you want me to give you a credit for the amount that I'm going to use to fix it? That could be an option too. Let's see. This is a great time here with you, Jen. Everyone, I like the realness of the answers. Yes. Yeah, you're very welcome. Very, very welcome. I'll wrap this up here. Jakey, welcome. Says, bought my house last year, got a seller credit to take care of some stuff. I'm glad the seller didn't update. I like picking stuff out myself. Me too. I bought a fixer-upper, and I'm glad they didn't do anything, because we changed a lot of stuff. Anne Marie says, put our house on the market last Wednesday in late afternoon. We had 6 offers. Another home seller in Northwest PA. Holy cow! Very desirable school district. Also, helped me stage my well. Yay! Awesome! Fantastic. That's a whew. Nice job. I wanted to, and I'm going to actually post this article. This is something that I wanted to touch on because it's based on a video I did a couple weeks ago. And I thought about I want to just bring this up super quick. I'm going to, let's see if we can get this all queued up here. Let's see. Do I even have it queued up? I don't even have it queued up. We'll get it squared away. This is an article that I'm going to dig into a little deeper, and I'll post it in the description. So I did a capital gains video a couple weeks ago, a month ago, thereabouts. I don't know, time goes by. And this article talks about the tax rules and how they're freezing the market, and it's about time and it's about to get way worse. I just wanted to tease this. I'm not going to get into this right now because it talks about, and I know that a lot of you have brought that up in the comments about that in that video, that the capital gains policies are way outdated. And this article by Realtor.com kind of gets into that on how the caps have remained unchanged since 1997, and that the values have gone through the roof, and that a lot of people are holding off selling because they're going to get hit with their capital gains. And I think there's, like, they talk about the stay put penalty. So I just wanted to tease this, and because I had pulled it up, I wanted to mention it. And I'm like I said, I'll leave the link in the article. And then if you guys want me to go into this more detail next week, I can certainly do that. But this is something that is, top of mind, that you guys had mentioned, that is a conversation that needs to happen with the federal government and getting rid of the capital gains. Listen, I appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate you guys jumping in the chat, sharing all your stories, and all the things, because you know what? That's how I love connecting with you guys in this way. 110% tells me what you guys are worried about, what you're concerned about, what your successes are. And you know what? I think that sharing that success helps everybody. So listen, I'm gonna jet. because it's 7:30 here on the East Coast, and I'm hungry. So I'll grab some dinner. So hey, guys, thanks for joining me tonight. I will be back next Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern time, same bat time, same bat channel. And in the meantime, disclose. Do what's right. But also, as I always say, looking on your neighbor, checking on your neighbor, be kind. And if you're talking to someone that has different viewpoints than you and you disagree with them, that's okay. Before you judge, seek to understand. Seek to understand. You might discover that you are closer to the issue than you realize. That you're not on opposite sides of the aisle, fence, or whatever you want to call it. Let's have some discussions, guys. Talk it out and all the things. Have a great night, guys. Be safe. I'll see you next week. Ciao.